Okay, as mentioned, I want us to now start introducing the black dot. Remember where we're up to. If I move my mouse, we just get this text repeating itself, this high text. Now I want us to introduce a black dot. How would we do that? Well, again, let's jump over to Visual Studio Code and let's start coding. So here we are. This is exactly where we left off. And what is the first thing I want to do? Well, let's introduce a div that we'll just style in CSS to create that dot. Let's create a div. Let's have it with an ID of dot. And again, we can have it blank because we're just going to style this div. You'll see what I mean now. Within our HTML, let's introduce a head section now. Within this head section, let's introduce a style element. And here we can start styling our dot element. And just so you can see what it is we're doing as we code along, let's open up our browser and put it on the right. Okay, so here we go. Firstly, I want this dot to have a background color of black. Why don't we see this background color of black? That's right, it's because we don't have a height or width. We've literally created this div, but it's literally got 0 size. So let's add a width of, I don't know, half M and a height of half M. And we save that. There is our div. Can you see it at the bottom left of that image? But at the moment it's a square and I want it to have beautiful round corners. So here we can just define a border radius of, I don't know, would 2 pixels look okay? Yeah, 2 pixels is fine. And the other thing I want to do is I want to absolute position this. I don't want this being outside of the image in its own block. I want it to be placed on top of the image. How would we do that? Well, this is not a course on CSS, but you may have guessed it already. We have to use the position attribute and define that to be absolute. So the position we want to be absolute. And now that it's absolute, we can define exactly where we want to place this dot. Yes, I know eventually we want to place it wherever our mouse is, but for now, let's just absolute place it on top of the image to make sure it all works. So we can place it 50 pixels from the top. There we go, you can see it moving, and we can shift it to the right. So to do that, we need to place it X amount of pixels away from the left. Let's just make it 20 pixels, and there we go. So we've shoved our dot somewhere randomly on our background image. But the whole purpose of this challenge was to dynamically place that div, wasn't it? So you know what I'm wanting to do? I don't want to place it within our HTML here. So let's remove this div with ID and let's create it dynamically. Because think about what it is we want to do. Every time the mouse moves, we actually effectively want to create a new div with an ID of dots and display that to the screen. So we need a way to dynamically create these divs. And we only want to create a div when the mouse moves, when the event is fired. So that's why within our code, we've got to get to our handler function. And our handler function is defined here on the mouse move. So somewhere in here, we have to start creating this div. So let's do that now. So here I want to create. So let's go here, create our new dot div. So let's define a JavaScript variable called .div. And how do we create an element? That's right, in part 1 of the series, we really went in depth into this. We can just access, of course, our document, but now we can access a method called createElement. And the element we want to create is a div. And what do we want to do now? Well, now we want to give it an ID. Well, actually, you know what? To make things easier, let me just change this ID to a class. So we can affect a div with a class of dot. And why I'm doing that is it just makes it very easy for us because we can access our dot div and then define a class name. And we can give that a class name of, that's right, dot. So it's just quite easy. And you'll remember in part 1 of this series, if we just did it like this and we left it here, this dot div would have been created, but it would be floating in thin air. So now we have to dynamically add it somewhere to a parent. So it's very easy. Again, we start with our document object, we access our body, and then a method called append child. You know how this works already, so I won't repeat it here. And of course, we're wanting to append this .div. If I save this, it should work. If I take my mouse now and we move over this image, there we go. We're getting all the text and we dynamically got that round dot, didn't we? But what you'll notice now is that the round dot isn't being displayed in a random location. In fact, it's stacking up on top of each other. We defined in our CSS up here in our code, we defined an absolute position. So I'm going to stop here because I want you to think about how we can dynamically change the location of that dot depending on where our mouse is. And remember, we spoke about event types. We spoke about the fact that that callback function, when it's called, gives you access to a whole lot of data in that event. And a bit of a hint, the data you're looking for here is your actual mouse position, your coordinates, your X and Y coordinates. So give it a go, give it a think. I don't expect you to know the answer, but in the next lecture, we're going to complete this challenge and we're going to dynamically change the location of that dot. It's going to be really fun. See you now.